Good evening, everyone. Tonight's meeting is a meeting for River Knoll Project, the multifamily development, 40 Croton Dam Road. This is our public scoping session. The purpose of this meeting is to review the scoping document for the River Knoll project, and the planning board, the applicant, our consultant will be looking through this document, making any necessary changes or modifications, and if the public has any comments on this specific document, we will take it at tonight's meeting. So this meeting, we will only be discussing the scoping document for the project. This is the guidance that we use and the applicant will use to create the draft environmental impact statement for the project. So, at this time, David, would you like to go through the document for the planning board, the public, and the applicant, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Just to expand a little bit on what the planning board chair said, we're not here tonight to take information as to whether you like the project, whether you don't like the project, whether you think there's too much traffic in the area, whether you think there are too many units in the project. What we're here tonight to do, as the chairman just said, is to go over the scoping outline, that is to specify specifically what's going to be studied in the draft environmental impact statement that the applicant must prepare. There'll be other times, other evenings where people can get up and say whether they like the project or don't like the project or this or that. We're here specifically and we're focusing on this scoping outline. We made about 50 copies and handed them out to the public, and if you've got a copy and someone next to you doesn't have a copy, please share. But we're here for a very focused purpose tonight, and that is to go over this scoping outline for the draft environmental impact statement. Anybody has any questions about what we're doing here, why we're here?
I just have a quick question. You said there's going to be in the future about the other...
Could you come up to the mic and ask the question?
Sorry.
Yes. Please state your name.
Rama Bramanti. You mentioned that it's going to be future meetings on if we are not in favor of this project or not. If we're not in favor to begin with, then why do we even have to bother with the scope? I think it's a waste of time to bother with the scope if the town's not in favor of it. That's my point.
No, that's not the case. We have to go through the process. The town board has decided that we've got to go through the process. We've got to entertain this action, this proposed action. At the end of the day, it may be approved, it may be denied, but we have to go through the process, and this is part of the process.
I think with the crowd clapping, they think they don't want this project approved.
At all. At all.
I have a question about the scoping project. My name is Peter Tripodi, 10 Coahuila Road, Ossining, New York. The required approval is here on table 1.
Peter, right here.
Yes.
I'm going to go through the entire scope before the public speaks about the scope.
Okay, well, I have a question regarding the approval required.
It's
No, I'm a resident of the town and you're not, so I'm going to speak. I appointed to this board, or reappointed to this board. The zoning map and amendments. Is anyone here familiar with a zoning called spot zoning? Does anyone know about that? No. Spot zoning is illegal, and this is totally spot zoning. Many of you have taken the same classes I took, CSE required courses, accounting and legal required courses with the State of New York Association of Towns, and they very well describe spot zoning. Spot zoning is having a zoning of multifamily, of having a residential zoning and putting multifamily there for a specific purpose of one project. If it's not in the comprehensive plan, Mr. Stallman, It's not in the comprehensive plan, this changed. In fact, this changed.
This board is not granting the rezoning.
I know that. Oh, I'm totally aware of that.
In front of the town board.
Yes, I know that.
Is the lead agency.
Well, that's the thing, I'm getting into the scoping and the environmental impact of this project.
Great, but
Okay?
this right now, we're just outlining the issues that the applicant has to study and include in part of the environmental impact statement. I just want to tell you.
Yes, I am aware of that.
Part of this process.
Mr.
it's part of the
Tripodi.
process.
I have one
Mr.
question about
I
the
think-
environmental impact.
Excuse me.
Yes, Mr. Chairperson.
Excuse me. We are going to go over the scoping document tonight.
That's fine.
Right now, Mr. Tripodi, please, with all due respect, the attorney will go through the process and why we are here and why this is not a precluded action of the board, the town board and the planning board. However, we have to run the meeting in an orderly fashion.
I understand.
And I would ask that the public will have time to speak, and I'll ask you to sit down so that Mr. Stillman can go through the document for the board, for the applicant, and for the members of the public.
I will sit down, but you did ask if anyone had a question about the document, and I have a question about the document. That's what you just said, the gentleman just came up and said,
Mr. Tripodi,
I am-
Mr. Tripodi, allow me to run this meeting.
That's
I would ask
fine.
that, Mr. Tripodi, with all due respect, I have a lot of respect for you. I'd ask that you sit down so we can go through the process and you will be allowed to speak.
except one question about the environmental impact on the table. You said if anyone had questions, am I wrong? No. I mean, you said if anyone had a question about this document, to ask the question. I have one question about the document.
I was the one who was speaking. I said if anybody had a question about the process, not the document, we're going to go through the document.
The scope, the environmental scoping
I
process.
didn't ask that.
But that's what it was understood as.
Mr. Tripodi, please
I mean,
allow,
it's just one question.
Mr. Tripodi, you will be able to ask your question. Mr. Stillman, please, you will be allowed to ask your question. I'll ask that you sit down so that he may go through the document and you will be able to ask your question.
Okay, but my
Thank
thing
you.
is, the comprehensive plan says.
Mr. Tripodi, I've asked you to
It's
sit
in the plan.
down
The
3
town-
times.
The town board.
And as a former council member, you understand
That's what they're gonna-
how a meeting should be run. Thank you.
Okay, so getting into the scoping outline, there are some general guidelines on the first page. But getting into the meat of the matter, on the second page, page 2, we have a description of the proposed action, which will be carried over into the draft environmental impact statement. And then the draft environmental impact statement must go through the various approvals that are required for this action. And table 1 in the scoping outline on page 3 lists the various approvals required and the governmental entity that would have to grant those approvals for this project to go forward. And then we have the fact that the SEQR regulations, the State Environmental Quality Review Act regulations, specify that there has to be a cover sheet, and the cover sheet of the draft environmental impact statement has to specify certain information like the title of the document, the applicant's name, the acceptance date of the EIS, et cetera, et cetera. Then the SEQR regulations require that there must be a table of contents for the draft environmental impact statement. I'm now moving to the top of page 4. The SEQR regulations require that Chapter 1B, an executive summary, which obviously summarizes the rest of the draft environmental impact statement. And then Chapter 2 starts out with a project description. So the project description must include the nature of the proposed action and the description of that. And then the regulations and requirements of the site's existing and proposed zoning designations. Then this scope requires that there be an overview and description of the site and its environs, specifically a description of the location, the frontage, access, acreage, ownership, and tax map designation of the lots involved in the proposed action, including the proposed future disposition of a very small portion of the property which is in the village of Austin. And this description of the site and its environs should also include descriptions of surrounding properties, including those in the village of Austin, as well as a brief history of the site and the area. And then in Chapter 2, project description, there has to be a description of the environmental characteristics of the site, which will have to include a description of the steep slopes and the elevations of the site, a description of the wetlands and wetland buffer areas, any water courses and hydrology, a description of the aesthetic resources, including the scenic views, and a description of the flora and fauna, including but not limited to trees regulated by the town code. Then there has to be a description of the project components, including items such as potential number of market rate and affordable dwelling units respectively, the size and number of bedrooms of the market rate and affordable dwelling units respectively, the amount of open space which is being proposed, the total number of parking spaces which are required and which are provided, and then the nature and amount of other project components. The scope also requires that the vehicular access and proposed circulation of the project be described and explained, and that other components of the proposed project, including vegetated buffers, street trees, landscaping, lighting, roadways, sidewalks, recreation, and other amenities have to be described. Followed by a description of plans for the maintenance of common elements of the project, including roads, utilities, and passive open space, as well as plans and a timeline for ongoing maintenance of all proposed mitigation for the project. I'm in the middle of page 5 now. And then chapter 3 really gets into the heart of the draft environmental impact statement and the analyses that have to be included. So for every issue area, and issue areas are such things as wetlands, stormwater management, traffic, vegetation and wildlife. For each issue area, there have to be 3 components: a description of the existing conditions, a description and evaluation of the potential impacts regarding that issue area, and an analysis and description of proposed mitigation measures to minimize or avoid environmental impact. So the first issue area is with respect to wetlands. And in terms of existing conditions, there has to be a professional wetland scientist going onto the property and mapping the wetlands, and a wetland map, a full report, and data sheets have to be provided to the planning board. And all work has to be conducted in accordance with the Town of Austin Wetland Chapter and if applicable, the regulations of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Connectivity of existing wetlands and water courses may establish a total size warranting additional governing jurisdictions, including U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. So that's wetlands in terms of existing conditions. And then there has to be a description after an analysis of the potential impact to the wetlands. And all impacts proposed will be identified, measured, and evaluated, including the loss of all vegetative cover due to construction. And this has to do with any water courses, wetlands, and buffers of those 2 components that may be on the property. So the evaluation of the potential impact upon the wetlands has to be followed by a portion of the DEIS regarding mitigation measures and how those mitigation measures would be implemented regarding any impact to wetlands or buffers. That would be followed by an evaluation of the next issue area, which would be related to soils, topography, steep slopes, and geology. So the existing conditions regarding soils, topography, and geology have to be evaluated and described, followed by any potential impact to soils, topography, and geology, followed by mitigation measures to minimize or avoid environmental impact to this resource. The next issue area, I'm now in the sort of in the middle of page 7, would be with regard to stormwater management and subsurface water. And again, the existing conditions have to be evaluated and described. Potential impact to stormwater, with respect to stormwater and subsurface water has to be evaluated and described. And any mitigation measures, including a stormwater pollution prevention plan, would have to be evaluated and described. And the stormwater pollution and prevention plan would have to be in accordance with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Speedy's general permit with respect to stormwater management related to construction activity. And we're going to be amending this section of the scoping outline to say just that. The next issue area has to do with vegetation and wildlife. Again, the existing conditions regarding vegetation and wildlife have to be described. Any potential impact to vegetation and wildlife has to be described, as well as all mitigation measures having to do with minimizing or avoiding potential environmental impact to vegetation and wildlife.
Excuse me. You kept mentioning existing conditions has to be described, correct? Who's going to be describing the existing conditions? You, the company, or?
Let me just finish this and then I'll answer that question. The next issue area has to do with historic and archaeological resources. So what's called a Phase 1A environmental assessment report having to do with historic and archaeological resources has to be performed, and depending upon the result of the Phase 1A assessment, there may have to be a Phase 2 environmental assessment. So that has to do with existing conditions, and then there'll have to be a portion of the EIS devoted to potential impact with respect to historic and archaeological resources, and then whatever mitigation measures need to be implemented regarding the minimization or avoidance of impacts to these resources. The next issue area has to do with existing utilities serving the project site, as well as current energy usage. So water service to the site has to be described, as well as the sewer system. And then any potential impact to water and sewer, as well as other utilities and facilities, has to be evaluated and described, as well as mitigation measures related to infrastructure and utilities. The next issue area, I'm now in the middle, more or less, of page 10. The next issue area has to do with land use, zoning, and community character. So the existing land use, the existing zoning, and an evaluation of the existing community character surrounding the subject property has to be described, as well as the potential impact with respect to impact upon community character of this proposed project, and the impact upon land use and zoning. This section would have to talk about the affordable housing component that's being proposed as part of the project, the ways in which the project addresses the reservation of parkland or the provision of money in lieu of parkland as a recreation fee, visual impact of the project on the surrounding neighborhood, as well as the possible impact of the approval the proposed multifamily 2 zoning district elsewhere in the town, as well as whatever mitigation measures are proposed. Now, the next section, I'm sure, is important to everyone, and although a lot of people here would like to stand up and make sure that traffic impact is included in the DEIS, and there are roughly 3 pages devoted to how to conduct a proper traffic study with respect to this project. So a licensed engineer is going to have to prepare this traffic study. Questions afterwards?
Excuse me, it's not Cherry Hill Drive, it's Cherry Hill Circle. It's a typo. Thank you. Can I also make an addition to that?
Afterwards. We're going to take comment from everyone regarding the scope afterwards. So let me just mention the intersections which have to be studied and evaluated, and then people can make suggestions afterwards as to what else needs to be studied. The intersection of Dale Avenue and Pine Avenue, the intersection of Croton Dam Road and Hawks Avenue, the intersection of Croton Dam Road and Pershing Avenue with Cherry Hill Circle, the intersection of Croton Dam Road and the site driveway, the intersection of Croton Dam Road and Kitchewan Station Road, and the intersection of Croton Dam Road and New York State Route 9A. And the peak hours that have to be evaluated are the weekday morning peak hour of 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Let's just listen to what David is stating. Can't hear you. Thank you.
We would all like to hear what David is saying, his presentation. So if we can quiet down the room so we all have the benefit of hearing what is actually in the document, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Can you keep that mic on because the speakers?
So the peak hours that have to be studied are the weekday morning peak hour from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and the weekday afternoon peak hour between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. And you can all comment on those peak hours.
School buses, 9 o'clock.
Please.
Okay. So as I said before, there are about 3 pages devoted to how to do a proper traffic study. And then moving to the bottom of page 13, or the middle of page 13, construction traffic has to be evaluated and described. Potential impacts relating to public transportation have to be identified. The potential to increase the capacity of the intersection of Croton Dam Road and Route 9A, as well as alternate mitigation, has to be evaluated and described. The traffic impact from the River Mill project has to be compared to the impact of the traffic from the Stony Lodge Hospital when it was in operation, including with respect to accident histories, has to be evaluated and described. The proposed jitney service, which is part of the proposal, shall be factored into the traffic analysis. And the potential impact of increased traffic from the project upon the safety of bicycling on nearby roadways has to be evaluated and discussed. The next issue area, top of page 14, has to do with community facilities and the current services, service levels, and capacities of existing municipal facilities and services, such as fire protection and police protection, emergency services, open space and recreation, and schools, has to be discussed. The potential impact to these facilities and services has to be discussed, as well as any mitigation measures that are needed to mitigate impact. And then there has to be a section of the DEIS regarding fiscal impacts. So the current taxes paid by the property owner have to be discussed in the DEIS, as well as a projection of expected tax revenue from the project after it's constructed. And then the costs and benefits of the project have to be evaluated, and proposed mitigation measures have to be discussed as well. The next the next issue area has to do with construction impacts. So the methods and nature of the construction of the proposed development has to be discussed. And then there's quite a long part of the scoping outline devoted to potential impacts relating to the construction of the project, including the potential for blasting and noise levels and vibration levels has to be discussed, as well as mitigation measures, including the preparation for the DIS of a construction management plan, which discusses the mitigation measures related to the potential impacts that are described in the scoping outline. And then Chapter 4 of the DEIS at the top of page 16 has to talk about adverse environmental impacts that cannot be avoided. And then we have a section, a very important chapter of the DEIS pertaining to alternatives. And these alternatives have to be evaluated and compared to the project itself. So we have alternatives A through K. There was an original proposal for the 188 units, which was a bit more, or somewhat more spread out on the site than the current, more compact proposal for the 188 dwelling units. So the first alternative is this compact layout of the 188 dwelling units. Alternative B, which has to be evaluated and discussed, is a conventional layout which meets the requirements of the current zoning of the property, which is R15, which is single-family homes on minimum lots of 15,000 square feet in size, which is about 3 homes per acre. And then a clustered development based upon the R15 conventional layout. And then a conventional layout based upon the R5 zoning district, which is a single-family zone with a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. And then a clustered layout based upon the R5 density. Alternative F that has to be evaluated and discussed is townhouse and multiple dwelling development based upon the existing multifamily zone in the town. And then townhouse and multiple dwelling developments at 8 dwelling units per acre. Alternative I is discussing the continued institutional use of the property. The next alternative is the adaptive reuse of existing buildings for other non-residential uses. The next alternative is adaptive reuse of the smaller existing residential buildings in the southeasterly part of the site, especially for affordable housing, and any zoning text amendments needed for this scenario, as well as the potential adverse social impacts of segregating the affordable housing have to be discussed. And the last alternative is required by the seeker regulations, and that's called the no action alternative. And this is a discussion of the adverse or beneficial site changes that are likely to occur in the reasonably foreseeable future if the proposed action does not occur. Then Chapter 6 is a discussion of irreversible and irretrievable commitment of resources. Chapter 7 is a discussion of growth-inducing impacts of the proposed action. Chapter 8 is the effects on the use and conservation of energy resources and solid waste management. And then at the end of the document, we have an appendix or a number of appendices, which would have to include the technical studies that are done and form the basis for the discussion in the body of the document. And these technical appendices have to include, but are not necessarily limited to, A is natural resource studies, including wetlands, vegetation, soil, all animals, including fish, terrestrial, and aquatic macroinvertebrates, birds, amphibians, reptiles, etc. So it's very thorough. Appendix B is a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which has to do with stormwater management. Appendix C are water and sewer system reports. Appendix D is the traffic study. Appendix E is the Phase 1A, and if needed, the Phase 2 cultural resource reports regarding historic and archaeological resources. Appendix F is the construction management plan. G is all seeker documentation, for example, the final version of the scoping outline, which the planning board is going to produce. And Appendix H is all official correspondence related to issues discussed in the DEIS.
Could you give us a brief summary of the process and what the planning board is doing at this particular meeting? Kathy, could you give us a brief summary of the application, the process, and what the planning board is currently doing here tonight? And, you know, just the process of how this started for the public.
Okay, so SECRA is a state statute. It's a requirement by the state that any board consider the impacts on the environment before it consider granting approval, any kind of approval. For this project, the planning board is the lead agency. So the planning board can't just say, we're not going to follow the state statute, we're going to ignore the state statute, we're going to deny the application, because if that were to occur, the developer would be running to court, starting a lawsuit, which the Ossining taxpayers would be paying for, and the developer would likely win that lawsuit. So, but I just want you to understand that this is the very first step in the process. The planning board, in this case, issued a positive declaration. If they had issued a negative declaration, SECRA would be done. It would be over, and the developer could be in a position to ask for that approvals be granted. We are instead, at the start of the process, with the issuance of a positive declaration, the developer has to do a full environmental review. And the heart of an EIS, which is what's required when a positive declaration is issued, is the study of alternatives. The developer has to study not just what the developer wants to do here, the proposal that the developer is putting forward, but also what if you were to instead do a development that conformed with zoning, that met the requirements of the R15 zone. And there's many different alternatives in this proposed scope that the developer needs to study and show that what they're proposing will be less impactful on the environment. So that's a very important part of the process and part of this EIS. And that really is the heart of the EIS. What we're here tonight to do, because the next step is to develop this document, this EIS that goes through all those studies and those analysis of impacts and studies all the other alternatives. And this is a very robust scope of what the developer must do next, the next steps. But we want to hear from the public, the planning board wants to hear from the public, what other things may be missing from this scope that you think should be included in this scope, and that's the purpose of this meeting tonight. It's not the purpose to say that you're in favor of the development or you're opposed to the development. It's to look at what's already provided. For example, there's 4 pages on traffic. If traffic is a concern, is there something missing? Is there another intersection that perhaps should be studied? Is there, is it not a proper description of the streets? This is the opportunity to weigh in on that and to give input and to look at things and raise additional issues that may not have been originally thought of in this scoping document. Because this is the outline that then the developer must go back and answer all these questions and respond to all these environmental inquiries. So just so you understand, by issuing a positive declaration, this board has taken the position that a full environmental review must be done, and that's more protective of the environment.
How long does a document like this
Sandy?
generally take to produce?
Sa-
Sorry.
Sandy, the documents that have been submitted prior by the applicant, are they online today? Okay, and the plans, the prior submittals, so that we can ensure that the public has an opportunity to go to our website to look at the prior submittals to see what the applicant has submitted. I think that would be helpful to the members of the public as well. Planning board members, do we have any comments, thoughts, or ideas? Right, and because you've got, okay.
Put the mic on.
Can't hear the question.
At this point, we have gone through the document. The planning board has had an opportunity to read, review the document. We had a meeting in early June to go over this document, and changes have been made. The town board also had the opportunity to review the document, so their changes have been incorporated as well. At this point, I'd like to ask our planning board members if they have any additional thoughts or comments.
Just briefly, I would like to encourage members of the public to take advantage of this opportunity.
Excuse me, would you be kind enough to stand up and speak a little louder? There's a lot of us that can't hear. What's your name? Thank you.
My name is Gareth Huffam. I'm a member of the planning board, and I was just saying that I would encourage the public to take this opportunity, because this is almost a unique opportunity in a large project like this, to make your wishes known in terms of what you would like to see studied. Please be as specific as you can at this point. Thank you.
So can we come up to the mic?
Member McWilliams?
I have nothing at this point.
Sandy, I'm just going to ask you a question, because at the last planning board meeting where the developer was here for River Knoll, he said he was going to post that new development on it, the cluster building, and you said the older one is on it, the new one's not there yet? So she's saying, no, it's not there yet, so his drawings that he showed, okay. So can we, as the planning board, can we just ask the developer to submit that to the planning board so that we can post it, so that all the people in the community can go and look at that? He said he was going to do it the last time.
Jeff, it was posted yesterday.
It was posted yesterday? Okay.
Maddie did it.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, we're going to open up,
Microphone.
At this point, thank you. At this point, we're going to open up the public session. You have a 5-minute limit to comment. And who would like to go first?
I hope you all can hear me. My name is Marissa Caruso. Closer. Marissa Caruso, 2 Redway Road, Ossining. So the first question I have is, as it pertains to traffic and transportation, I'd ask you to include an evaluation of Croton Dam Road and Grandview Avenue. Grandview Avenue is the road that connects Croton Dam Road to Narragansett. In addition, Narragansett Avenue should be evaluated for traffic.
very nice.
addition to that, when you're looking at the evaluation for weekday afternoon from 4 PM to 6 PM, that has to be extended to 7 PM. I can tell you, I live at Redway Road, which is at the opposite side of 9A, excuse me. And at about 6:30, traffic is backed up to Redway Road to get across 9A every weeknight. Yeah, so, and especially for commuters coming back from the city, you're not getting into town until about 7 PM. Where you talk about truck routes and you're identifying truck routes for construction, we ask that there be an evaluation for truck routes and traffic volumes associated with the business activities at that property. Because our understanding is that it's going to be a full service, inclusive with spa and yoga, and so I'm not really sure what that includes in terms of regular day-to-day business, so we'd like an understanding of what those traffic volumes would be. And finally, as many of us know, our school district is bursting at the seams. So there needs to be an evaluation on, right, but also for the alternatives that are proposed at the back of this. So we'd like to see a comparison of this property versus any of the alternatives.
That's in there as well, because the alternatives have to study all the impact issue areas.
Okay, well, that's critical, because we can't accommodate anybody else. Thank you.
Ms. Richards, I'd like to apologize for before. Mr. Stallman, I have a question for you. I'll start by saying, nowhere in this does it really mention the R15 zone, which includes Country Meadows and a couple surrounding areas. Does that, are you gonna like split Stony Lodge from that zone and then create a multifamily, or are you gonna take the whole R15 and make that a multifamily? It doesn't really specify.
Peter, I'm not doing anything, but
I know that.
what's being proposed is that this property by itself would be put into this new zoning district, which would, it's proposed to be called the MF2 zone. So there would be the creation of a new district and the rezoning of this property into that new district.
Okay, so then you would just be taking that one property and rezoning in a certain way.
That's what's being proposed.
Okay. Now, the rezoning, is that consistent with the comprehensive plan that, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars you were given to make that over the years, but is it consistent with what's in the comprehensive plan? Because I have a couple of pages from the comprehensive plan that really almost state otherwise. And it doesn't, this document doesn't mention the comprehensive plan at all. And I know that if you want to change a zone to an MF from an R15, you need to go, to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. This seems to be consistent with what the developer wants, and that quite specifically and detailed is called spot zoning. That's the process of singling out a small parcel of land for a use classification totally different from that of the surrounding area for the benefit of the owner of such property and to the detriment of the owners, other owners. That spot zoning is unconstitutional under the New York State Constitution. Also, when you spot zone, again, you're rezoning a parcel of land to a use category different from the surrounding area. So this addresses the zoning change, but I'm pretty sure this is just really illegal and unconstitutional. Is there anything, how come it doesn't mention the comprehensive plan?
It should, and we'll make sure it does. And I'm not going to opine on the spot zoning part of what you're talking about. But
Of course.
in the comprehensive plan update, which was adopted in December of last year, it talks specifically about this property. I don't have it with me, but to the best of my recollection, it says that the town board should be open to the adaptive reuse and or redevelopment of this property in a manner which will have no significant adverse environmental impact around this, upon the surrounding neighborhood.
Yeah, it's nice. It's like straight out of the copy and pasting that you give to all the different towns. I have that memo from December. I have the memo from December, and it states exactly almost what you said. Again, when referring to the environmental resources,
Peter, we're here to
building multi-story apartment buildings is not, I would say that goes against the comprehensive plan. Wouldn't you?
Peter, we're here to find find out what you'd like to have included in the document, not to debate.
Well, the zoning part of the document, Part G, deals with the rezoning, and the comprehensive plan states the opposite of that. And to rezone something opposite of the comprehensive plan and to the benefit of the owner of said property, again, is unconstitutional in the state of New York. It's cold spot zoning.
So that'll be an issue that we
Okay.
can raise potentially before the town board. This board is lead agency for SECRA.
I'm just
okay?
letting them know.
So when the town board that comes in front of the town board, you can make whatever arguments
Sure.
in front of the town board.
I will. Thank you, everyone.
My name's Cecilia Kelly, I live at 16 Croton Dam Road, and I ditto on Peter's, what he says, because why, when you're living in a single-family residential, not multiple-family district, why do you want to change this one area? We don't want it, we can't take the impact. I live on Croton Dam Road, and it's treated like it's Route 134. It's a highway. There's red racing at night. We have problems up there. We don't have enough police attention up there. We did when the county was there, but not when the village is there, or the town. Okay? So, I don't feel that, oh, and another thing is, we have a lot of underground springs there. What are they gonna do, start building all these homes, this big building, and then reconstruct all these underground springs, and we all have floods? I have a weeping willow that's the ugliest thing in town, and I leave it there because if I cut it down, my neighbors would have flooded basements. All right? So I'm against this whole thing, totally. My personal.
I'm Matthew Weiss, I reside at 6 Maple Road. I was curious about the traffic pattern. Do you anticipate putting a light in at the entrance to the development? Traffic light?
Can you speak into the mic, please? Can't hear.
Do you anticipate putting a traffic light?
I think you're mistaking this board for the applicant. This board is not advocating anything. It's going through the secret process. We're talking about things that need to be studied. So do you have a suggestion as to what needs to be studied?
I think you need to study where the school bus stop will be. If it's on 134, you're going to create more havoc and a difficult traffic situation already. I think that if you have single access to and from the property on the existing road, it'll create backups on Croton Dam Road as well as within the development. And I was curious if any consideration was given to using solar power. Thank you.
I'm Catherine Alberti, 47 Lee Avenue, and I want to ask that the traffic study also includes Saturdays, especially Saturday mornings, because there's significant backups at the intersection of 134 and Croton Dam Road and 9A. And that period of, say, from about 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. There may be others here who have other observations, but Saturday's also an impactful time.
Good evening, Robert Salenti, 13 Feeney Road. On your traffic study, you have here council will be performed when schools are open and during appropriate weather conditions during the following time periods. Does that mean the traffic study is just once, one day? And what's appropriate weather? I mean, we live in the Northeast. Appropriate weather could be rainy, could be snowing. Is it your intention to just to do it during when it's dry and sunny? Well, can you answer my question? Does it mean that it's just one day of a traffic study?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. And when school is open, does that mean, I mean, school could be open the day before Thanksgiving. We know
No,
attendance is very low.
there are days that are X'd out.
Okay.
The traffic engineers know how to do this.
So it's more than one day?
Correct.
Now, I don't have your plans. Is there an entrance or exit on Narragansett? Or just on Croton Dam? Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Ray Santucci, 29 Grandview Avenue. I'd like to see a study of the water for Ossining, because I know we have a water treatment problem. We're buying water from Newcastle as part of the study. They're saying we don't have enough water, we can't make enough, I guess, for the town and village to support, and that should also be considered in this plan. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, George Seitz, 6 Cherry Hill Circle. We're talking about Croton Dam Road. It's a dangerous country road. It is not a highway. I defy, or I ask, all members of the planning board to park in Cherry Hill Circle and make a left or a right-hand turn onto Croton Dam Road. Right. Applies to Pershing Avenue. You're talking about a dangerous situation. What do we need? Somebody to get killed or maimed? The police are there constantly using that as a speed trap to monitor it. The road undulates severely. There are blind spots coming from Sassy Deli and coming also from 9A. It's a dangerous intersection as it is. And there's no way you're going to be able to change the definition of the road bed there. All right? That follows into a dangerous S-code. I know you're going to look at the various accident records over the years that have occurred there. 40 years ago, maybe 35 years ago, a truck coming from 9A going down Croton Dam Road lost its brakes on that road, or was not able to stop, and actually destroyed the third house on the right-hand side in our dwelling, in our little community in Cherry Hill Circle. The point is, we cannot look to have an additional 380 cars, which is 2 per unit, that you're proposing, or the builder is proposing. It's insanity. It's too damn dangerous.
Steve Alpert, 15 Pheasant Ridge Road. A couple of things I think that have to be added. I do want to echo the concern about, I think we probably need a whole section on impact on schools, school population, buildings. That's a big part of the environment. I think the intersection of Croton Dam Road and Pheasant Ridge Road needs to be added. The times here probably need to be an hour wider on both ends, both morning and afternoon. And one other thing that caught my eye here, under stormwater management, there's a reference to on-site underground fuel tanks, which to me raises red flags for possibilities of toxic waste. So that needs to be looked at seriously. And then I guess I'd like some assurance that the alternatives that are looked at are going to be looked at in the same level of detail as the main proposal, so that we can all make fair comparisons and fair judgments as to what the ultimate best use of this property is. Thank you.
Adele Pascucci, 21 Feeney Road. The gentleman who just spoke mentioned the intersection of Croton Dam and Pheasant Ridge. Well, Feeney Road is right opposite Pheasant Ridge. At rush hour times, getting out of Feeney Road, which is one house width from Narragansett. You have Narragansett, Feeney, and Pheasant Ridge, all merging onto Croton Dam Road in probably less than 100 feet distance. So please add Feeney Road to that discussion.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Kono, 10 Croton Dam Road, which is at the very top of that nice windy long hill as you come up the top from Sassy Deli. And my wife and I bought the home 4 years ago, and you know, we never realized that when we bought the home how much traffic was on this road, and that the actual speed limit there is 15 miles per hour. Now people go up it's 15 miles per hour. I live right there. I see the speed limit sign every day. Now, people fly up and down this road, okay? I won't get to that point because it looks like traffic is going to be considered as an impact. What I'm wondering about is the impact of my property value and my neighbor's property values. Are we going to have an agency come in to do a study on what an impact like this would be to our property values when this is finished? Also, I'd like to have a study done on the impact of crime in the area when we introduce low-income housing and we introduce 200 more people or units into the area. Thank you.
John Leslie, 121 Dale, the intersection of Pine and Dale by Sassy Deli. I lived in the house for around 35 years, and even considering the time that I lived there, in addition to my in-laws who owned the house before me, I can count at least 10 times that we've had to call the Public Works Department to come ream out the sewage line in the center of the street. I have some theories as to why it gets backed up and needs to be reamed out. One of which, well, you could say basketballs and things like that might occur from time to time, but it's been an ongoing issue. And I know there's some work going on there currently, something to do with IBM. I've been assured that that's going to take care of the problem. I'm not so sure about that because my issue is not with the flow of sewage coming down Pine Avenue, but with the flow of sewage that comes from both Hawks and Croton Dam Road. And I always had a theory that with all the condos that were put up across Route 9A, and they might have had adequate sewer lines to transport it down to where I live, but there's an older infrastructure where I live, I might assume, that is unable to handle this current load that's already coming down from the new condos that have been built since I lived there. So with an additional 188 residences, I can only imagine what issues might happen. And I think that any resident living anywhere, if you've had to call for sewer backups for 10 times, just imagine your own homes, your own properties, what that could be like. So I would like to see some assurances in these sewer studies that are going to address what's coming down these sewer lines in the years ahead, as well as what's currently there that can't handle this load as it currently exists. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samuel Cancel. I live at 7 Grandview Avenue. This project is literally in my backyard. What is going to be the quality of life, like the gentleman just mentioned, when you have 1,800 people living in that development? Seriously, I mean, you're talking 188, there's an average 5 people per family, you know, 10 per development, that's 1,800 people. You know, what is the quality of life? I moved out of Yonkers to have peace and quiet, to sleep with the windows open and not have to hear people arguing, parties going on to all hours of the night, which I think this project is going to bring.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tony Conti. I'm at Cherry Hill Circle. I wish I was on Cherry Hill Drive. I would have a nice view of the golf course in Briarcliff. I would recommend that we also include a study of traffic from the Taconic exit, Taconic State Parkway exit on 134, going down towards 9A. I don't know if the board is aware that IBM is closing their facility in Somers, and they're moving 3,000 workers to the IBM on 134. So that's going to have a greater impact in the very, very near future to begin with, and then adding this housing unit is going to cause more chaos. So I would definitely include the traffic study from the Taconic State Parkway exit on 134 down to 9A as well. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Marion Latin. I live at 4 Dewars Court, which is off Downey, which is off of Feeney. I'll be as brief as possible. My parents live on Pershing Avenue. They're 80 and 81 years old, and every time I'm at their home, there's cars that go speeding by. It's a cut through, it's a shortcut sometimes between Narragansett and Croton Dam Road. And someone before mentioned making a left or right at a Cherry Hill Circle. This is directly across the street. And even though your line of vision is better than it is across the street, there are cars racing up and down that street all the time. It's very dangerous. So what I ask is that you add some sort of a study of the number of cars and what speed they drive back and forth on Pershing Avenue. Because I think that by adding this humongous structure, you're going to add an incredible amount of traffic on that street. That's it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Burton, and it feels funny to be on this side of the mic. The traffic study, everybody keeps on adding the traffic study, and it's just the area. You know, instead of specifying different streets, because every time somebody comes up, we add another street, you need to just take the area and remember that you have a very large park in that area, right off Narragansett, Grandview. You have to consider that. Also, you have to back your time up, especially on a weekday night, to at least 3, maybe even earlier than that, because your school is starting to release, and knowing the schools in Ossining now, I'm not going to say mothers, half the parents run up to school to pick up their kids, so they're leaving before that time, and then your school buses are coming back at 3:30 or so. So you have to consider that time also. And just for edification purposes, the speed limits in Ossining, in the town and the village, are mandated at 30 miles an hour. 15 miles an hour is a suggested speed only. The other thing on the alternatives that I didn't quite understand, and after making the first meeting way back when I was the only one there, and I'm glad I had a lot of help now, they said there were alternatives and you could put 24 houses on it. Well, I can take a flat plan and put 24 houses on it, but we know we're building on a lot of hills, and you can't do it. So any alternative plan, is it actually going to show the alternative, how you would put one house on there or 24 houses on there? This is not my question. This is questions from the audience that hasn't been brought up. When you're bringing up professionals are going to be doing the studies, who are these professionals? They're hired by, paid for by, and you know, I know that you have to review it, and hopefully an engineer goes in there, it doesn't slant for one side or the other. But I think the question came when a lot of the mumbling at the beginning was who are these professionals? Who hires these professionals? Who pays for these professionals? Who reviews their plans first? And when do you get them last? The other thing is that, as far as I know, probably 75% of the acreage that touches Croton to this project is in the village of Ossining. Has anybody contacted the village to say what their concerns are? I realize the engineer is a town village engineer and he has to be consulted on that. But also it's 75%. Everything, Pershing Avenue is in the village and actually touches into Stony Lodge in village property, which is very short. But there is everything. Croton Dam Road, those houses are in the village. that back onto there. Grandview Avenue, the same, and then also you got your Second and First Avenue that go there. So I don't know, you know, maybe just talk to them, just to find out the feelings are on these things, and thank you.
Good evening, my name's Heidi Burns, I'm at 51 First Avenue in Ossining. I'm on the dead end. My concern, or what I would like closely looked at, is the nesting habits. There are hawks up on that hill, there are turkey vultures up on that hill, and I believe just last summer I saw a falcon. So I agree with the schools and the issues with that. I agree heavily with the traffic flow, but I bought there because it's quiet.
Yes.
And there, you don't hear anything. I have hummingbirds, I have all these wonderful little creatures. I want that to be added. I want the nesting to also be looked into, not just trees and traffic and schools. It's really important. These are our homes. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz. Pleased to be here this evening representing Val Santucci, his daughter Valerie Schimmer, 37 Croton Dam Road Corp. Their property owners immediately across the street from River Knoll. My clients are extremely concerned about the proposed zoning, the proposed development, and the impact to the community. Having said that, I think your board and your consultants have done an excellent job in preparing a thorough scope. Having said that, there are still a few comments that I want to present about the scope this evening. Land use and zoning, Chapter 3G2, intensity and scale. Not quite sure where the 10 units per acre comes from. I think that's inconsistent with the town and the surrounding area. I think this EIS needs to heavily evaluate the development in the context of the surroundings. The zone that's been proposed by the developer seems completely inconsistent with the surrounding area. They're all single-family homes. There's no adjacent multifamily housing. Even the village of Ossining's immediate adjacent zoning is single-family. I agree with the chief's comment about the village's involvement. I think it's important. It does seem like this MF2 is more like unlawful spot zoning than it is like something that is consistent with the character of the Housing of this type is usually transitional in nature, and usually transitional housing is located in a different area. I hope you'll make sure that that gets examined. The EAF, which I also reviewed, claims that this proposed zone will protect the surrounding neighborhoods. We're not quite sure how the neighborhoods get protected by this. We're also not clear. I have to echo something that Mr. Tripodi said at the beginning of the meeting. I looked at the town's comprehensive plan and I failed to see the comparison or the acknowledgement of what's been proposed here in the comprehensive plan. And David, I think you do need to add that into the scope. That was something that I didn't see in there. It's called an adaptive reuse project. I'm going to talk about that when I get to alternatives. About construction impacts, section 3K, pre-existing environmental conditions, numerous references to the subsurface oil tanks, that's great, but there's no mention of any analysis of prior hospital or medical waste that could be on the property. I'm definitely concerned that there's no indication that there is a phase 2 that's been required, and I know my clients and the community would like to see a phase 2. I think there should be a comprehensive environmental audit of the buildings. These buildings are old, there is asbestos most likely, there are PCBs in the caulk and light ballasts in buildings of this nature, and there's no indication of that in the EIS. It has to be analyzed. 25,750 cubic yards of cut. That equates to about 1,300 truck trips at 20 cubic yard trucks in connection with the construction of this site. That's coming out of their EAF. I recommend that the scope look at a rebalanced job and encourage the applicant's highly qualified team to rebalance this job. It's wonderful that you've got blasting and the blasting protocols in there. A site with this kind of steep slope certainly is going to require that the community understand the blasting. General comments, obviously there needs to be a thorough analysis of steep slopes and wetlands. 57% of the site has slopes in excess of 15%. Not quite clear on why they have set the height at 50 feet in their proposed zoning when all of the surrounding zoning, as I understand it, has a maximum of 35 feet in height. Again, I don't see the consistency. We're requesting on behalf of the community some basic things. Site sections, a 3D model, a computer-generated video, and a comprehensive photo analysis from numerous vantage points throughout the town and surrounding village. This consulting team are, as I said, highly qualified. They've done this before, and I know they know how to do these types of things. The folks in this room need to see those. You need to see that as lead agency. I didn't see that called for. I might have missed it. Views from and of the various buildings on site, not just the highest ones, as what I think was referred to. And I think you need to make clear to the community, is this MF2 only being asked to be mapped on this particular property? I'm almost done. Bear with me if I go over by a minute and a half.
Back you up.
Back
you up. You can have my 5.
Thank you. Then I'll take a breath and I'll slow down. Alternatives, oh, come on, Ingrid. Alternatives, Chapter 5. I really do commend your board and your professional staff for requiring so many alternatives. I was very surprised when I looked at the scope to see the number of alternatives. Having said that, I know my client clearly wants to understand the impacts and the possible benefits of the continued use of the institution. Many of you may be surprised that one of the single largest property owners in the immediate area, 5 acres, would be perfectly fine if the site was reused as a hospital. So don't pay short shrift to the institutional use. The Stony Lodge Hospital facility was there for decades, and I don't think you have ever had a room full of people complaining about it like you do this evening.
Right.
Adaptive reuse. Roman 5I, adaptive reuse. They talk about adaptive reuse, but they don't propose to adaptively reuse what's on the property. So they're trying to claim an adaptive reuse redevelopment, but there's no analysis of the adaptive reuse of the buildings. If they want to wrap themselves up in a wonderful, sustainable concept like adaptive reuse, let's see what they could do with the buildings that are there rather than knocking them down and replacing them and disturbing the site. Why is that not being examined? Mr. Santucci, my clients fully understand the rights that this developer or anybody has to recognize full and best use of their property. But to do so in accordance with zoning is very different than to do so in accordance with a proposed rezoning. Reopen a hospital. Construct single-family homes in accordance with existing zoning. Fine, that's what's legal there right now. Remain consistent with the surrounding neighborhood that's there right now. Fine, no problem. Nobody would be here, certainly in these numbers. But there is no basis we see to rezone this property to a multifamily zone. When I look at the zoning map, and you all saw it, you've got it as figure A4 in that EAF, there's no multifamily zone. You've got to go to the other side of 9A to get to a multifamily zoning district. It really is a big leap to now take this property and go multifamily. We submit that if this is permitted to occur, essentially you're putting a round peg into a square hole or a square peg into a round hole. In either event, you're actually breaking something. You're breaking the fabric of the community, and we would highly recommend that your board as lead agency find against this ultimately in your finding statement and recommend against this to the town board. Obviously, we'll all be in front of the town board. I fully understand that the legislative prerogative is with the town board, and you're in a difficult situation to play lead agency on the environmental review. Last comment. My clients are currently evaluating filing a formal protest petition under Section 265 of the New York State Town Law. That section would allow the filing of the protest petition to trigger a supermajority vote of the town board in connection with any zoning. We're still studying the property lines, the boundaries, and the mathematical measurements. However, based upon the folks who are here tonight, I think it's fair to say that more than the requisite number of people will be objecting to the proposed zoning. So I thought, just as a matter of courtesy to the town and to your professionals, you should know that we expect you to allow or inform the town board that this will necessitate a supermajority vote. We look forward to working in cooperation with your board and the public and your staff as this process unfolds. Thank you for the opportunity.
Following such an eloquent and well-versed gentleman is not too intimidating. However, my name is Maria Nancy Kennedy. I live at 22 Croton Dam Road, directly across from the Santucci family. My concern, and my only thing I haven't heard, is there is an additional development, housing development, rental development going on in Hawks, on Hawks Avenue. I want to know if it is going to be addressed in terms of traffic by having it compounded with whatever is going to happen at Stony Lodge. And that's just something I think we should have incorporated and addressed.
Hi Gary, how you doing? Long time no see. My name's Ray Arucci. I've lived in Ossining since 1968. I am at 47 First Avenue currently, and back in '92, my family found a nice, sweet little home on First Avenue. Nice, quiet neighborhood with a dead end, and frankly, I'd like to keep it that way. I'm concerned about the impact of all of our homes. If this high-rise apartment building is allowed to be built, what will the resale of my house be? It's worth X amount of dollars now. I can guarantee you it will not be if this goes up. I beg you to consider rejecting this rezoning and have consideration for the people in this room who have property in the adjoining area around this site. It will really impact us heavily. Thank you very much.
Hello, Board. I am Jim Picciano. I live at 70 Hawks Avenue. You all know me. I've lived in the town. I built a house here 38 years ago, so going on 40 years. I hate to sound like that, and excuse me for having my back to you, but I usually like to talk to everyone. I feel like kind of like the town historian. Last week we did speak about the development on Hawks Avenue, and that was addressed, and also about the density. As you know, the town is not what it was when I moved here 40 years ago. I gave this talk last week. When I first moved here, it was 1 horse per acre. Okay, behind me was an 11-acre horse farm. Down the street, and I love looking. You heard all this. Down the street was a sheep farm. Down the street was a sheep farm. Okay, I don't think with the density that we're talking about, I don't think you can get the sheep out of the barn or the horses at this point. That's number one. Number two, when you look at case law is used in court cases to help with the court with the case. Case studies are used in science when you look at how we can look at things to make it better. This is case opposition history, and I'm going to give you the history. Since I came here, first the condos went in, then we had the overfilling of the cemetery, and if you think there was a lot of trucks then, whoever brought up the truck, I think your lawyer did, the truck traffic would be just as atrocious. It crushed the road on Hawks Avenue when they overfilled the cemetery with C&D waste, which came from the Bronx, which we have no idea what was in it. You talk about density? The cemetery, even when you're dead, you have a density problem. I'm telling you, you think I'm kidding? What happened was, somehow it wasn't monitored, and the cemetery got overfilled. And if you drive down here, you drive along Hawks Avenue, you'll see a wall. Well, that was supposed to be at grade with the road. They realized they overfilled it. They still wanted double-depth graves, so they filled it higher. So now, even when you die, you've got double depth, and there's a density problem at the cemetery. The biggest case history study I can give you, as I related to case law and case study, is you do not have to do a traffic study. All you have to do is go back 30 years, where Country Meadows is right now. There is a proposal to put a shopping center there. A shopping center. Now, that's right on the corner of Croton Dam Road, Kitchewan, 9A. Once again, who was there? I was here. And I think that was the start of getting my ear going and what was going on in the town. But anyway, and probably a lot of other people were there. But anyway, the study was done. They were going to dig into the bank, into that bank where Country Meadows is, I think, what's the street there?
Pheasant Ridge.
Pheasant Ridge. Pheasant Ridge goes up a nice sloping hill. That's where the barns were, the horses were there. They were going to cut into that. There was going to be a 40 or 50-foot high wall behind Herbie Olmsted, Joanne Schneider. So you'd have to have a fence up there. If the kids were playing, you better have a parachute on. Finally, after a lot of fighting, a lot of opposition from the townspeople, we got it put down. Now, I refer to the traffic density. That was 30 years ago. There's a lot more cars on the road now than then. So if we look at case law, we look at case study, let's look at case history. If it didn't work then, how is it going to work now? With 180 apartments on Stony Lodge. What you got to do is look back then and say, geez, we couldn't do it. The roads haven't changed, right? They haven't changed at all. So how can it possibly work now? So to go back to a law cliche, I'd like to say, if it doesn't fit, you must quit. That's the end.
All the changes that have been added, are they going to be made available to the public soon or when? Online?
We'll make sure that the changes are put online for the public to see, okay?
John Latin for Dewars Court. One of the other intersections that I think that's going to have to be studied is the intersection of Ryder and 9A, because for anyone who lives in this immediate area, now it takes me, and I live right off of Feeney, maybe 6 minutes to get on 9A southbound. Well, with all this additional traffic, everyone hence, I think, is going to go to Ryder Road and 9A. Because the poor souls that live in the area, now it takes you 5 or 6 minutes, and I'm right there. 20 minutes, 25 minutes? This is crazy to consider something of this magnitude. I understand it needs to be put back on the tax rolls, but something of this size is inconceivable. Thank you.
Jose Lamel, 42 First Avenue. The way that our neighborhoods are situated is if we want to get to Highland Avenue, we have to basically travel to Dale or Croton Avenue to get down to the library to get to Main Street. If you're adding around 400 cars, they're going to have to travel the same way. So I would say we would need to check out Croton Avenue and Dale Avenue, do a study there, the traffic light, what's going on there. Because by Walgreens, there's a light there that takes forever to change, and you can be backed up for it for 45 minutes easily going down Highland Avenue. So please add that to the report. Thank you.
Okay, this is going to be our last comment.
Hello, Kevin Conley, Quail Hollow Road. You have an attractive nuisance, not a nuisance, but a park which would attract young children to go. So I would like to have a safety impact. You would have young children walking to the attractive park on a very dangerous highway. So could that be addressed, please?
Stephanie Grant, 48 Pershing Avenue.
I'd like to, I agree with everyone is saying this evening. I actually used to work at Stony Lodge Hospital way back when I was a nurse there. So there is lots of medical waste. All we used to do is use needles there on those children. But what I am coming up here to ask is, what are we going to do about the schools? Who are you going to ask about the schools? Our pre-K coming in next year will not have an art program. My son is in Claremont this year. They did not even have a computer lab. They had to use laptops in the classrooms. We are overcrowded. So what more and what else are we going to bring into these schools?
Stokes, First Avenue, basically where you are, Stony Lodge to me. What are you guys going to do about the medical waste that I'm finding out about after all these years? Asbestos cleanup, how is my family going to be protected? Also, the wetlands, there's a flooding problem there now, neighbor isn't here. That really needs to be addressed. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for your comments. At this time, we have, we're going to have another work session on this scoping document so we can take a look at the modifications and have further discussion. So we'll set a meeting for a work session on July 6th. Oh, it's July 6, 2016. And thank you all. May the applicant come to the front, please? Are you available July 6th? Are you available July 6th?
I'm available.
Enough notice.
We're available.
It's
We're available. We're here. It's our town.
More people.
Okay, so we're going to set a work session date for July 6th for the, yes, David, anything else? Okay, at this point, so that we can go through the,
Just for the record, Madam Chair, with me to my right is Glenn Vetramile. To my right is Glenn Vetramile, who is principal of Glencoe, and my name is William Null. I'm a member of the firm of Petty and Fade.
thank you. He's turning on his mic.
Testing. The seeker regulations bill, as you know, have us finishing up the scope by roughly the 13th of July. And we'd like an extension to the following meeting, which would be the second meeting of July.
That's fine.
Thank you. All right, thank you. At this point, I'd like to adjourn our meeting for tonight. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Ingrid, at the work session, can the public make comments, or is it one?
No, we're still, no, and not at that work session. We'll be reviewing the document at that point. The public can be present, but the public will not have an opportunity to speak. It's a working session for the planning board. Okay? May I have a motion to close our meeting? Mr. McWilliams? Thank you. Thank you. And a second? Okay, all in favor? Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. We've enjoyed you. Thank you. Good night.